Here we go. We are recording. Excellent. All right. Good evening or morning or whenever you watch this, everyone. Um, I'm Joshua Leos, and I'm here with John L. Williams, and we are going to be presenting today about qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. Just before we get started, I am having some technical difficulties. My camera hasn't been working on my laptop all week, and I have no idea why, and I cannot fix it. So don't mind the black screen when I'm talking. I understand it's broken. But just introduction again, we're discussing the differences between qualitative and quantitative risk analysis, and we will also be explaining which one is done for every project and why.
So the first one that we're gonna be talking about is qualitative. And qualitative, the risks are based on subjective probability and the likelihood of the impact. The risk can change depending on what the project teams discuss. So it's not based off just data and all around what they're doing, but what they're specifically wanting. This relies on judgments, teams discussions, and historical experience. It is descriptive using observation and experience to determine parts. And it uses probability slash impact matrix. And it uses a ranking system like low, medium, and high risks. So it cuts out a lot of the data and is more of a opinion based of what they think might happen or discussion based.
And quantitative is kind of the opposite side of that coin. The risks that you're analyzing, they are data based and calculated by the probability of impact on the project. So we're putting numbers to the risks. We're saying this has a percentage likelihood of happening. You're creating data that gives you more informed, objective decision making. You're assigning a monetary value to your risk. So if this risk happens, it's going to cost us this much money. It supports the creation of contingency planning. So because it's a bit more thorough than qualitative analysis, you have those better contingency plannings when the risks do appear. It helps in risk prioritization when you have the opportunity to do a quantitative risk analysis. You're again kind of you have more data and your data is more accurate, so it helps you prioritize which risks are more dangerous than others or more costly than others. And it's I put this a little bit in down at the bottom. It's complementary to qualitative risk analysis. So they are they are opposites, sort of, but they're working towards the same goal. So
Yes.
both is great if you can do both. That's great. But most times you can't do both.
hmm And usually, and just to add on to it real quick, usually
Yeah.
they do qualitative first, and if they need to be a little bit more specific, like what you were
Hmm.
saying with like assigning more to a value-based type of something or trying to specifically define something, then yeah, they'll usually
Absolutely.
then go into the quantitative.
Yeah. So the one that we're always going to do the risk analysis that you always want to do on a project is qualitative risk analysis. And you want to do that for a couple reasons. Some that John L. already mentioned on his that first slide, but just to kind of reiterate, it's quick. You can do them very early on in the project. You don't need necessarily any specific data or any historical data to pull from an area or something like that. You just kind of go with what you think is going to happen. And because it's so quick, you give your team more time to focus on the most critical risks before you're moving on to others. So you can really determine, okay, these are going to be the ones that are going to be the most dangerous for us. What do we do to avoid them before they happen? It's really useful when data is limited. So again, at the beginning of a project, that's when you're doing this. Just like John L said, we're getting this qualitative analysis done quickly so we have as much idea of the risk that we're taking on as possible when we don't have all the data. And sometimes quantitative isn't practical to do. It takes a long time. You have to have specific numbers to put on things. You have to have specific data to gather. And sometimes that just isn't feasible for projects that are maybe smaller or quickly, they're over quickly.
All right. So with quantitative, this is rarely implemented. It's really implemented because, for one, it requires a lot more time to assess and evaluate. So usually it would add on to timing on projects, as well as cost. It requires lots of data from different parts of projects. So it usually covers like cost, scheduling, material sales, and just anything that they think might be a risk or could have a risk into it. They usually add in if they're already getting the data for it. It requires people with skills and other resource tools to help calculate that data. So, well, and I'll cover this in the next point, but the cost to have this for projects could outweigh the benefits. So, kind of like in my last point when I was saying you had to have people that have the skills and the resource tools to help calculate these different data points. Um, that costs money to get those people, and those people, I mean, they're a specific, they do a specific thing, and so they're going to be a little bit costly, especially for certain projects. And so, with smaller projects, sometimes it's not worth having um, so much cost into something like that to get a small risk taken care of. Whereas if it's something that's a big risk, you can usually find it with like qualitative. It has high levels of precision, but even though it has high levels of precision, it's not always necessary. Kind of like what I was saying, where the risk might not be a big deal to destroy a whole project. It might be something that's super small, like for instance, it could be something that could be where if it does break or doesn't go right, that it doesn't cost a whole lot to fix. And so it wouldn't be worth doing a big data analysis for it. And the last thing is that, like I said, it takes extra time planning this stuff, and so it usually will add on to a schedule because the data is very intensive to get, but it will cover your bases for all risks. And then the last thing for our conclusion, so qualitative risk assessment is always used, while quantitative is only used in larger, higher stake projects. Qualitative risk assessments can differ depending on project teams, and use in projects can be made into can't be made into numerical values or data. So some projects just you can't put data into, you can't make numbers into put into data, and so quantitative just doesn't work. And then quantitative risk assessment focuses more on data when available. It is very complex and it usually measures all data for overall risk assessments because of cost. If you're doing one thing with quantitative, you might as well go ahead and just start doing all of it. Then it finds underlying issues that have been missed by qualitative measures. So again, qualitative will go first. You'll see what you need. If there's too much risk, but you can't pinpoint where it is, then you get the quantitative in there and find the data, and it will pinpoint exactly what you need.
All right, that's all we have for you guys. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
watching, and we hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday.
Yes, thank you.